Have you got it now?
Recording in progress.
Okay. All right, what's up, Swamp Zombies? This is Steven with Fantology, joined this time by Ryan, Ben, and Josh, 4 out of the 5 possible Fantology members. And we're talking King of Thorns, Book 2 of the Broken Empire by Mark Lawrence.
Is the fact that 4 of the Fantology 5 are in on this discussion in and of itself a small endorsement of the series?
I would say so.
That's fair. That's the.
And Jake is just too busy reading Foundation by Isaac
Asimov.
Whatever. Like the father of sci-fi to engage in reading this book. So
I think that was just Ryan doing kind of it was Ryan's weird flex because he recommended the series.
Yeah.
And so he wants it to be.
That's an earned flex.
Okay, that's fair.
Flex. Yeah.
Weird. Well, you got to say weird flex, but okay. That's the meme, right?
Yeah, that's right. No, this is, my review thus far, I really like the first one. I don't know if I like King of Thorns quite as much as the second, to be honest. We can obviously talk about it more.
You mean as much as the first?
Yeah, sorry, did I say that wrong? Yeah, I liked Prince better than King so far. I have not read Emperor yet. And Ryan, I know you've read Emperor. Josh, have you finished the trilogy?
I got about maybe 30% of the way through Emperor, but then you guys were so slow going through King. I didn't want to read Emperor and then not be able to differentiate between them. So I stopped and actually read Foundation while I waited for you guys. Yeah, which was an amazing book, I will say.
Oh, yeah, now I know read that one too.
And Ben, you just finished King as well. I literally finished the book like 2 hours ago.
Oh, you pulled a Josh.
Yeah. Well, I actually read it. I didn't listen at 3x to finish.
Okay.
You can throw that shade my way, but I stand by my actions.
Hey, you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes for Fantology podcast. So thanks for tuning in. If you want to find more of our reviews, including our review of Prince of Thorns, you can do that at www.fantologybooks.com, and you can support the show at patreon.com/fantology_books. So let's just kind of jump right into it. I don't know. Do we need to do a non-spoiler thing for this? I say we just do full spoilers for the first two books.
For second books, I feel like for first books, non-spoiler is good. Yeah, because it's if people are deciding. But second book, if you've read the first one and you liked it, then read the second one. That's my non-spoiler review.
That's your hot take. Yeah, definitely. If you could make it through the first one, then go for it. Yeah.
Second book's probably a little bit tamer.
No.
I agree. Okay. Should we start by talking? That's one of my talking points that I have down. Kind of along what Ryan said, they're tamer in terms of darkness, right? I'm assuming is what you meant in darkness,
like overall violence
and violent content.
Mm-hmm.
So they doled, I don't know if that's the right word, but they doled Jorg out quite a bit for the second book. His actions weren't quite as miserable as they were in the first book.
Mm-hmm.
And also the ending, which I don't want to get too into right now, but the whole book was set up as man, is he going to kill this person that would probably be a better ruler than him? And then they did a little flippity flop on that. So I feel like that took out some of the grayness of his character. That for me was really compelling. And then when they switched that, it kind of took out the main villainy of this book for me. So in terms of the overall, I don't know, body count of this book versus the first book, but in terms of Jorg as a villain, I feel like he was much more of a villain the first book than he was the second.
I'll agree with you on your Jorg point, but the original disagreement was what's the overall level of darkness in general? And so I agree that Jorg was a less dark character, but part of that was because we got really in the weeds of being able to explain what has happened to Jorg and why he's the way he is. We got two very sickening scenes to me. One of them caused me to put down the book for about a week.
The dog
was-
scene.
Yeah, the justice of the King Orden or whatever his name is. Teaching Jorg that lesson. Not like the dog torture. I also had a hard time when he committed what's the name?
Fratricide.
Fratricide, right?
Yeah.
Incidentally, or accidentally. But yeah, so I think that those two scenes made the book as a whole darker than the first one. But that's just my.
But he also killed a child the first book.
Did he?
Yeah, it was like one of the. I mean, I don't think it was an infant, but it was like he killed a kid.
Like a teenager?
Yeah, like towards the beginning, he.
But that was like
I just
more
read
like
it more as.
that was more like in
Yeah.
a war type setting. Like this was a baby.
But it also was like more accidental. He didn't mean to. I mean, I guess he came there, like that was part of the reason why he went.
It was him climbing his personal mountain, right? So he could look over it and choose his destiny, and he always kind of knew that he wouldn't do it. But
So the reason why I don't think that is quite as dark as some of the things that happened in the first book is that it's played as a big deal. It's played as the reason why he's like locked this memory up that's been tormenting him for an entire book. And so, yes, it was like a really terrible thing that happened and a really dark thing that happened. And if you dwell on it, yeah, it's absolutely like super dark. But it had a plot impact to it that I felt like reflected how terrible it was. Whereas in the first book, terrible things would happen and he would do terrible things with like little to no ramifications on him or the plot or anything. It was just like terrible things happening because terrible things happen.
And he was super unapologetic about it. So when the terrible things happen and when the main character is like, yeah, these terrible things happen and they're like fine with it, then as the reader, it seems really dark.
I agree with that. I think that I think that this book was better than the first book for the reason that it was much more like into Jorg's like character and psyche, and like you felt a lot more compassion for him. But to me, that compassion like magnified the darkness of it. So I don't know. I guess there's no real clear-cut answer here, but
yeah,
I will say that on my second read through, I did skip the part with Justice, the dog. That was traumatic for me reading it the first time. And the second scene with his little half brother was also I didn't remember that, but it was pretty unnerving reading it through this second time. And I mean that's I guess the whole argument is whether it's how the book reacts to that rather than the scene itself, I guess is what you guys are saying. Whereas Jorg from book one doesn't seem like that would have bothered him as much.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been such a horrible memory that he had to get rid of it to continue going.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you guys realize that the dead baby that he was saying the whole time was Deegan? I think Deegan was his half brother's name. Was that a nice twist? Like, did that add to the gut punch of the moment?
So I always thought in my head that the dead baby was just going to be a baby that he killed in like the nuclear blast.
Which we did get a scene kind of like that.
We did get a scene like that, but I thought it was just going to be, I figured it was going to be something of his past actions, right? That was haunting him. But so that was what I thought it was. And then I liked that it was in that vein of a past action haunting him, but I don't think it was too shocking that it was, his brother, or his half brother. And I guess I wish, and this was a little bit of the whole book in general. I wish that some things were a bit more foreshadowed, like, I don't know how you would have been able to guess that it was going to happen with this half brother like that.
Yeah.
It didn't seem inevitable in the way that I wish it would have kind of seemed inevitable. It was like you got to the chapter, and then in that chapter did a good job of leading up to it. Something terrible is going to happen. You're going to but it didn't really lead. Anyway,
I feel like
I think that's. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
This goes back to one of Ben's arguments about a different book that I'm not going to spoil, in which Ben was kind of arguing that the event wasn't really foreshadowed enough or appropriately enough.
Is this the changes thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I actually have a better example of how I kind of wish that this would have been done. Is Dalinar's arc in Oathbringer, with the terrible thing that I don't want to get into spoilers, but anybody that's read Oathbringer knows the thing that happened in Dalinar's past. That's we're told that something bad happened in Dalinar's past in like the first chapter he was in, so it's not too much of a spoiler. But like that, I feel like as the book progressed,
I think part of that is that you've had Sanderson had like 2,500 pages leading up to that part versus this is like
fine, yeah, fair, but
a third of that.
Just setting up that arc, like there were Easter eggs laid, and there was like momentum going to what happened.
I agree.
That I think that it could have been a little bit more done well.
Yeah.
But again, this is Mark Lawrence's. Is this his second? Was Prince of Thorns his first published book or second? Or like, is this his first series that he's coming out with?
I think it's his first.
Yeah. So either way, comparing like things in Mistborn have, like if you compare this like Mistborn by Sanderson, like this is handled much better than some things in Mistborn is. So I don't want to try and like make this unfair comparison, but just the event.
I agree. That's a somewhat that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
But
all right, Josh, good point for Josh.
I also agree with your original point, Ryan. I do think that was a little bit unearned and uses infants in ways that they shouldn't be used as plot devices. So
I think so I agree that some of the events could have been foreshadowed more than just this, and I think it's kind of a function of the whole time skips and time jumps that were kind of the central, I guess, backbone of this book. Every 4 or 5 chapters we were jumping years back and forth, and I think there were some good things that this structure gave to the book, but then some things made other things more difficult. And for example, at the end he pulls out the gun right at the ending, but that didn't get, like, the whole idea that a gun could even be used didn't even get introduced until like the previous flashback chapters. It's like well into the book, like way into the book. The book is almost over at this point. And I thought it was really cool. And I think it could have been cooler if it had been like, I don't know, somewhat of a vein throughout the entirety of the book, but it didn't pop into like the very end. And it's like, oh, and he's got a gun. And you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. But also like, could it
sounds like
cooler?
A worst of the best.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yes.
I'm spoiling
even if it would have been a straight up like Chekhov's gun, where it was introduced in the first act, not mentioned again until the duel. You know what I mean? That could have been cool too.
Yeah.
And then
I guess that's what I'm calling
Chekhov's
for,
gun. Yeah. And even the same thing happened with the like ruby jewel type thing that the princess had.
Yeah.
It was like a little grenade bomb type thing.
Uh-huh.
Bigger than
and even like the zoom, the Google Earth cameras.
Yeah. The satellite, whatever he's got.
Satellite, yeah.
I think so. The ruby thing, I think, was actually done better because it starts with talking about how Gog can use the fires, and it's like every fire is part of one fire, and this ruby, I guess, is then kind of like all bundled up. So there's a little bit more of some of this throughout, but like you say, Josh, like the ruby wasn't introduced until the whole dowry conversation, which is like the chapter before. So yeah, there's some weaknesses in the ruby bomb.
It's kind of like you get flashbacks until something is introduced that is going to get them up out of the pickle that the current is in, and that'll jump to the current. So I think it's a really cool idea to structure a story like that. I just don't know how well the execution was done. It wasn't done terribly. It wasn't like unreadable by any means. Like, I just think that it could have been a little bit, it could have been done a little bit better, I think, to make it like go from like an interesting device, an interesting way the story was written, and to being like a really, really unique way that the story was written,
I'll definitely remember it because of the way that it was used. I can't think of any other. Can I think of another? Can you guys think of another example of a book that we've read on here with this level of flashback, like back and forth constantly throughout the whole book?
Like Hanius Trilogy.
Yeah.
Maybe not the same level, but a similar
Yeah.
level.
Yeah, especially book.
Okay.
Was it 3 of no, 2 of Lycanius.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's like thousands of years back and forth.
Yeah. I'm actually like plotting out and writing a story, like,
Whoa.
that does. I talked to you about this like a few months ago.
You and Mackenzie, right?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't made that much progress on it, but the main part of the story takes place a generation before the current part of the story. So like, it's my goal is kind of having like maybe a 70-30 split, kind of like this was, where you're getting most of the page time back, in this previous generation of characters, and then there's also a current time story happening. So I did kind of take some inspiration from this and how I kind of want that to play out, but so I appreciated it. I think that there were some weaknesses in the way it was done.
So Josh had mentioned Stormlight before, and Stormlight is also a book that flashbacks are used in, or a series that flashbacks are used in. And I think that it's a little different because they're so like you can predict when they're going to happen and kind of like the purpose behind them. I think a reason why a lot of people didn't like Rhythm of War as much was because it was based on a viewpoint character in the flashbacks that they didn't love as much as some of the other books. And so I don't know, I think flashbacks are always a hit or a miss. I think the interesting thing for this book was that the flashbacks were used in such a way to help you identify with Jorg and kind of his missing like knowledge or missing information because he had his memories locked away. And so you're kind of as an audience member trying to kind of figure things out along with him, and also this sense of like disjointed narrative you're having to kind of cope with. So I think that was a unique way that they were used, but I think that we've definitely reviewed books with other flashbacks in them.
Ryan, does Emperor of Thorns have the same flashback thing going on, or is it a straight narrative? Tell us that much. Don't tell us any more about Emperor.
There are flashbacks in Emperor of Thorns.
From my reading, from the 30% I read, though, I don't think it's as heavy on the flashbacks, though. Like,
no, I remember. Well, I don't know. I do remember getting sometimes confused when I was listening to the books on Audible, trying to figure out, wait, what time am I in here? Is this the past or present, or how far in the past? So it was there were certainly times where I was a little bit confused.
Okay, so time jumps, flashbacks. We killed that one. Next topic. Let's talk about some of the. Okay, here's a question that I wanted to pose after reading this book was side characters. So I think we talked in a Prince of Thorns. We said Jorg was a really interesting and fascinating character, but outside of Jorg, there wasn't really like anyone that was too notable. Did you guys think that other characters were developed in King better than in Prince? And maybe why or why not? And then also, is it just hard in a first-person narrative to have good side characters?
I think you answered your own question there, Stephen.
Maybe my question went on too long and give you my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I would struggle to give you any like super concrete motivations behind many of the characters besides Jorg. That's kind of where I'm at. I think that they were done a little bit better. The Prince of Arrow is cool, but again, like you see him really in one scene with hints at him being in other scenes, and I like the idea of him as a character, but yeah, him as a character in the actual book, I mean, I don't know.
I still felt like, when you said you don't really know their motivations, I feel like I understood the Prince of Arrow's motivation pretty well.
Okay,
he's
fine.
Like your typical noble hero who's like, I was born to be the emperor. I'm doing it to make the empire a better place. Like, I'm not trying to hurt people. I want the people under me. And Jorg, it's interesting from his perspective, because the Prince of Thorns is everything, or not, the Prince of Arrow is everything that Jorg isn't. You know, he's this charismatic guy who looks after everyone around him. People just know he's destined, and that just pisses Jorg off.
Yeah, I like that. Sorry, can I go then? I like the conflict of that. I really do. I like how that is set up, and I like that Jorg is positioned as like the evil like force that's standing in the noble person's way, you know. And so in most books it would be flipped, where you're following the Prince of Arrow and you had this like evil kind of Joffrey like character that was standing in the way of like Jon Snow or whatever. But so I like that conflict a lot. I thought it was really cool. But the actual, him as a character didn't really do it for me, because you didn't really get much time with him.
You didn't have any reason to root for Prince of Arrow, because he's kind of like a hollowed out archetype of a character. But I think that the best defined side character that we have was Macon. Or is that it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how you say his name.
Yes.
But I mean, especially with that conversation that he had with Jorg, where he wants all the violence to stop because of what happened to his daughter, right? And and then Jorg is like, well, why aren't you, standing behind the Prince of Arrow? Like, he also wants to unify the kingdom, and he's like, because I think that you're gonna actually do it. Like, I think you have a better shot at success, and so I'm okay with the, kind of the ends justify the means. So I don't know. I thought he was a very well-defined side character. You kind of got hints of his past. And the problem, I think, Stephen, first person, it's not that it's impossible to care about side characters. It's about to care about side characters more than our main character cares about side characters, right? Jorg just doesn't care about people, right? In fact, he actively dislikes most people, even people that really care about him.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of what makes it harder in this book. And I think last time we kind of had a discussion similar to this, we brought up Dresden and how like side characters in that series feel really well defined because Dresden actually likes them, So yeah,
Good
I don't
point.
know. That's kind of my.
But how much I do agree with a lot of your point, Ben. I'm just wondering, how well developed were the side characters in Dresden after book 2?
Again, I think Murphy was pretty well developed. I think Marcone was pretty well developed. I think, yeah.
Well, I guess like the shells of the bones of the characters were there, but there was a lot of development that still had to come later in the series for Dresden.
I think the problem with this is that you could have 10 Prince books or, Thorn books, and the side characters would never be any more developed, because that's not the point of the book.
There'd just be an endless stream of different brothers coming in.
Right. Yeah, it's because Jorg would just kill them before they get developed.
Yeah. Or sacrifice them, or be okay with them,
Yeah.
Or just doesn't let them get close to him, right? Like, at some point you're gonna have to get another person's viewpoint other than Jorg to really care about these people. So
yeah, I do like Ben's point about caring about them more than Jorg would care. You're in Jorg's shoes in his head, and sometimes to get out of that, and it's a little difficult in the first person view, where it's just so everything you're getting is from one point of view.
Yeah, I think also Red Rising does a pretty good job of having solid side characters. And I think that, there's a lot of similarities between Jorg and what's the main character? I don't know. Anyway, a lot of similarities between the books, and I think
Darrow.
But yeah, there you go. But
Darrow's a decent human being.
He is a decent, but he's definitely willing to. He's a violent human being as well. So yeah. But again, he cares about people around him. So
Ben, if that point is true, that the reason why we don't care about the side characters is because Jorg doesn't, does that mean that the Broken Empire is doing exactly what Mark Lawrence wants it to do and not having good side characters because
he set up a situation where he doesn't need good side characters? Yeah. I see that. I could see that.
This is a thing, I think, where you can say that the book is doing what it wants to do, but that doesn't mean it's super enjoyable. You know what I mean? You can appreciate the content for what it's doing without like getting a lot of enjoyment from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely think Mark Lawrence wants the series to be a case study on Jorg and a very dislikable main character that's doing questionable things, but like looking pretty dope along the way. You know, that's kind of what his set out to do.
Yeah, I do want to clarify that I am enjoying these books, but I just mean in the instance of like developing side characters, which is something that some books do really well and adds to the enjoyment. That's not really the focus of these books.
Yeah.
So,
Did you guys know that this book is heavily inspired by another book?
no.
What book, Ryan?
It's called A Clockwork Orange, which
That's like a literary classic, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, it's written in 1962, and it's very dark. It's basically about, I mean, this is from Wikipedia. Alex is a 15-year-old living in a near-future dystopian society who leads his gang on a night of opportunistic, random ultraviolence. Alex's friends are dim, slow-witted bruisers who gangs muscle. Anyway, so it's interesting reading
From
about
that description. It sounds like the next hit TV series from your streaming service.
No, this sounds like Thorns combined with the Purge.
This definitely sounds like a Blumhouse picture, next summer Blumhouse picture. I Clockwork Orange always seems like a book that people like will reference and talk about, and I can never get what it's about based on their references because it seems to pop up in the most random of places, and I've never gone on to I've never felt the need to read it.
I kind of feel the need to read it now.
I do.
I read the plot summary on Wikipedia a little bit ago because I learned that it was inspired. Mark Lawrence was inspired by this book, and I read the plot summary and I thought to myself, this does not sound like an interesting book to me. So maybe there's enough deviation, or maybe the fantasy setting are just more interesting to me than the futuristic dystopian society.
Who writes The Clockwork Orange?
It is written by Anthony Burgess.
Well,
Well,
I might recognize the
we
name.
might know revise our iceberg list and throw that one in there somewhere.
It's not fantasy though, right? It's
it's dystopian.
Dystopian, yeah. Okay, but in the 60s.
We're gonna get shredded on Discord. Discord, tell us if we should read this book.
Yes.
Yeah, we might have to do this. We might have to read it at some point.
Okay, one side character that I did like that I wish we had more from. Can you guys guess who it is?
Miana.
Big K.
Miana, actually, yes, but I was thinking of someone else.
Is it
Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine.
Yeah.
Ben said Big K. I don't know.
Oh yeah, big. Okay, yeah, hadn't yet assigned the nickname Big K to Catherine.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, she well, I did like the twist of kind of Sages infiltrating her dreams, making her think she was pregnant, but she wasn't, so she ended up like taking poison. Like that was all pretty interesting. I don't know.
Didn't you guys love the "Hello Jorg" part of the book?
I thought that, I mean, it was interesting. You just mean the fact, like her role in it, or the whole time box thing? I mean, that was
everything. It was just like "Hello Jorg," and then Jorg just talks like I felt like there was some beautiful prose written around that about Jorg's reaction just to those words, and then after that it's just like a blank. All of a sudden Jorg is like waking up and he's like, wow, what happened? And so you're like, as a reader, I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to know what happened. Like what was so bad from after that point that Jorg had to erase it from his memory.
He did do a really good job. Mark Lawrence did a really good job of writing the way that he wrote. Like you said, it was some really good prose. It made you feel like you were Jorg losing your mind around the same point. Like I specifically remember he, I think, uses the word like glisten, and Jorg was like rhyming things with glisten, and he's just like totally losing it, and is like his mind is going off on some random tangent in the way that our minds do sometimes, and it just felt so crazy, and it fit.
Yeah, I totally agree. The one thing I will say with Catherine, so that was my favorite part of the book, right? Was her was figuring out why he was so emotionally devastated, like you said, Ryan. And that mystery was for sure what compelled me. So I don't want to like for this next negative thing, you guys already said the positive things, but I also feel like I'm not really rooting for any type of romance anymore, because she just hates him so much, and even if it's like some subconscious stuff that she was tricked into, she still hates him, and it does make some comments like, oh, maybe I do wish it was, Jorg's baby and not like she does make a few comments like that, like that she's still kind of fascinated by him, but it's still like she just has so much hatred for him that I can't root for this romance.
Don't you think? But it could be explained, right? Like the reason that she hates him is because he killed Deegan, but really it was Sagis's fault. And she understands Sagis, and she's the reason why Jorg was able to take him down at the end even. So I feel like she could, with some explanation, with some proper communication, which we never get between characters in fantasy books. So it's probably ridiculous for me to think that this would happen.
TV shows and pretty much every. Yeah.
But like, I feel like Catherine could, if given a chance, come to accept Jorg.
I don't think so. I think that her hatred, if you have such deep hatred for somebody, then even a logical explanation of what they did isn't going to absolve that hatred and turn it into love.
Yeah.
At most, you can maybe forgive them. Or
here's the thing: is Jorg somebody who we cheer for him finding romance?
Yeah, I feel like
I feel bad for
anybody who ends up with Jorg.
It's.
I mean, Miana seems to be doing okay at least through her wedding day.
Well, yeah, I mean, but does Miana deserve somebody as bad as Jorg? I feel a little bad for Miana.
I don't know, man. She gave him a freaking bomb to blow up half their forces. She's pretty ruthless.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, she's 14 as well. Is she just as evil as Jorg?
Maybe they're match made for each other.
Match made in hell.
I know. Maybe Sagius shouldn't have been preventing him from picking up on Catherine, but rather.
Okay, so I called that, right? In our Prince of Thorns to some extent.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. The whole prophecy, like I didn't really get that. Like the two people joined together would be like could rival.
Yeah, it specifically said two Ancraths together would rule the empire, or not rule the empire, but would create would basically put an end to whatever order of whatever's going on with Sagis and those types of people. So yes, in Prince of Thorns, I do feel good in saying I identified that Sagis was influencing him while he was trying to take down Catherine or prevent anything from happening between them. But also, is Catherine even an Ancrath? Does she qualify for that prophecy? That didn't make sense to me.
I don't remember honestly exactly why. I don't know that he's specifically preventing Jorg from getting together with Catherine.
Then maybe I'm off.
He's trying to manipulate Catherine into killing Jorg, maybe so that his Jorg and his dad Aladdin won't ever make up, and it just kind of eliminates any chance of that happening.
I had the same thought as you did too. So
I thought Catherine could either be a wedge between Jorg and his dad. I think the thing is Jorg and his dad teaming up would be the two Ancraths that could put an end to everything, right? Uh-huh. And so if Jorg could forgive his father, then they could be able to maybe stop this. And if he and Catherine married or fell in love or whatever, then that would make it a lot more, have a lot more motivation for him and his father to be on good terms.
Well, and I mean, that's the
that.
same reason why Jorg's brother was killed, right?
It does say that, yeah.
And that's the same reason why Jorg was manipulated into killing Deegan. And so I think they're just out to pretty much make sure there's only one Ancrath around.
What do you guys think of the role of prophecy in this book / series? I don't know if I'm as into it as I am into prophecies in other books. Like in A Song of Ice and Fire, I'm like tracking the prophecies and like seeing which ones are fulfilled and which ones aren't. Same with Wheel of Time. I feel like in Broken Empire, I'm just like, okay, like I don't really know what's important here or really care.
It seems like they're definitely just like an incidental like side portion of the plot, whereas like, other books you're like looking forward to the next big prophecy reveal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones, I feel like it's a little bit different because they give you the prophecies so early on, and then there's so much development. Whereas these books, the prophecies are more of a side to the story. They're not. It doesn't revolve so much around it. It's more like explaining the actions of these like master manipulators behind the scenes a little bit.
Okay.
And
this almost seems like a Harry Potter type of prophecy book, where it's kind of like the prophecy supplements your understanding of the events that are transpiring versus
rather than drives like what's gonna happen type of.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's more analogous to Joe Abercrombie, First Law, the prophecies in First Law, and especially the prophecies in the second.
Age of Madness prophecies.
Age of Madness.
I just finished my reread of the trilogy, and I was like, "Is there prophecy in the first?"
trilogy? I don't remember if there's any prophecies in the first trilogy, but in the second trilogy, there's some prophecies.
Yeah, the lion and the lamb and the owl, and and there might be another animal in there too. Yeah.
But anyway, it seems a little bit more like that. What kind of confused me was the weight that Jorg puts on prophecies, because sometimes it feels like he just has disdain for prophecies, and other times he's like trying to fulfill those prophecies. Like when he goes and makes what's his face accept him as, or like adopt him into their family, into the Arrow family, so that he can well,
I think he's manipulating societal,
maybe
like.
Oh yeah, I thought he just did that so he could become the next Prince of Arrow. Although I really didn't understand that, like getting Egan to say that he was adopting him as he was dying in front of the priest who's already on his side, like that's really going to be something useful.
I think it could. I think it could be, honestly. Like
if it is, it's because it's forced to be. Maybe. There's no reason why.
Yeah, couldn't he have got a crooked priest to say this no matter what? Like if I'm king of any other land, I'm not going to put any stock in what Jorg is saying. Yeah.
But that's why I think it might be for him to know he feels like he's fulfilling the prophecy, though.
Plus, like apparently he didn't kill the prince because he was trampled to death by his own men. Like, okay, I guess technicalities. Yeah.
The last thing I will say about prophecies real fast is I do think it's interesting that's like a mathematical prophecy, or what, like that's the implication, was that they had done all these mathematical computations that this was going to happen with like certainty, like
that was a little weird to me too, like the whole mathematician thing. And doesn't like Jorg hate the mathematician guy?
Mathematician.
Yeah.
because
I was like listening to it. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a mathematician, but I'm not entirely certain.
Anyway, sorry, Ryan, I cut you off, so you can.
I was just gonna say it's something that might not be as clear now, but there is something to be said in this world about the power of will and its influence on reality. And I think that Jorg, if anything, has incredible strength of will. And I think that we might see a little bit more why that might be important.
That's interesting.
Good foreshadowing.
Well,
yeah, there's some good foreshadowing first for Emperor, sounds like.
that's cool. I was going to say, to finish up our discussion about math magicians, I think Stephen might fit right in at home with his data science magic.
Steven's a math magician for sure.
Yeah, good. Do a nice little regression model for Jorg's life.
Are you trying to get me to do a weird flex right now? Is that
No, that's
what's happening?
I don't know. Well, I honestly didn't know if it was like, oh, in this society, like they've taken our concepts of like data science and modeling and kind of like use that to inform like their like superstitious, like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It kind of seems like that could be like, especially knowing that the author has like a PhD in math.
Yeah,
like,
but it also went through some calculations that Jorg could perform on the spot, and they seemed, they're like advanced calculus that he was doing. So it seems like they have some understanding of like higher order math.
I mean, calculus has been around since Newton, though.
Yeah,
right?
but okay. But calculus it's also the foundation for most like statistical modeling you're doing. So,
well, yes, true.
So
they do say, but they don't have the computational ability to have any of that be useful yet. They're not at that point.
Well, they have an AI. We don't know what they might have a computer that they.
Well, I mean, maybe like maybe the math magicians have
that's what I'm saying. They might have some like computer somewhere that they're able to run these models on.
I don't think I think it's more likely that they've kind of have this hybrid superstitious thing that's based on, like some type of modeling that
wasn't that like a big thing in the like 50s, is they had whole teams of people solving these like matrices out. That was like their whole job was to
wouldn't surprise me.
Sounds like a good math anecdote. Like the one math lecture that the professor wants to have something interesting. It's like, rather than solve these problems today, like, I'm going to tell you a story about the history of math. And
and now feel grateful that you have your TI-89 that you can plug the matrix in. All right.
Yeah, let's talk about this more at the end of book 3.
Ooh, okay. Ooh. Another teaser.
And that's how you do foreshadowing.
Yeah. So
I should be an author.
In general, I thought the technology and the magic and the setting was, again, really cool. And I think he's built this up nicely from kind of the introduction of this broken dystopian world in the first book. We don't get very many details. Now we get more details in book 2. And it sounds like from what Ryan is saying, more will be explained in book 3. So I think this is a nice progression of what's going on in the setting with the builders and what level of technology we have access to. I like it.
Have you guys gotten to the part where at Castle Ancraft, they talk about how there's a sign in the bottom
that says no parking or something?
Yeah, it's basically they live in a parking garage.
Yeah.
That's their castle.
And I think Jorg says that, the builders obviously had some stuff, but, we don't understand how any of their words fit together anymore. Like, what could this be for?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of this would work really well in a more visual medium.
Yeah.
Than
it could definitely be a movie.
Yeah, especially. So can we jump ahead to the end? Because the end where he talks, like as he's walking up to the duel, it's the backdrop of this description is just about how his mother's playing the piano. And he talks about like how they're walking along and the high notes and the low notes are coming together and everything. And this whole scene was so cinematic to me as they're, walking up with the dramatic music for the big showdown.
So that's going to be what band?
Do we know it's going to be this band, Josh?
What? The band, Kurt Cobain's band.
Nirvana?
Nirvana. It's like some Nirvana song, right? Like they're going to put like a Nirvana song in here where they're like walking up and
I don't see it. I'm sorry.
You don't see it? Because it's going to be like a song from our day. Because,
Yeah, it's going to have to be.
And I don't know, like Heart Shaped Box or something.
I feel like maybe there's more than just Nirvana that could.
Nirvana's playing in there in my head.
Not like some epic like a soundtrack. I don't know. I was thinking it would. Punk grunge rock is wasn't on my mind. It didn't.
How is punk grunge rock not on your mind for?
I agree with Josh. I think some punk grunge rock would fit really nicely as the soundtrack to these movies.
Okay. All right. Well,
I don't know. I would say more like Black Parade album, like pick and choose any.
Yeah, that would be good. I could see some Linkin Park
you mean
as well.
like the dun dun?
Yeah,
dun,
welcome to the
Kind of. Yeah.
yeah.
As he walks up and then he shoots
when I
him.
was a young boy.
Yeah, kind of. And then like if we just like shoots him and starts like like screaming it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, that twist was really cool when he just pulls out the gun. It's like, or do you know why I've practiced all this time, to become a better swordsman, so that you believe that you'd accept this duel with me.
Right.
Typical Jorg.
And with he's got this sword in his left hand. And he's like, yeah, I'm actually left-handed. It's like, nope, it's because I can shoot with my right hand.
Yeah,
that was a cool. That's how you subvert a trope right there.
Yeah, that is.
It's like,
It's kind of like an Indiana Jones type thing, right?
Yeah.
With the swordsman, and then he just takes out his gun and shoots him. That's similar to that. Did you guys see the Prince of Arrow twist at all coming?
No, but I thought that was well done because looking back, I should have.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that definitely reminded me of like a Joe Abercrombie twist as well. Like
It was well done.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear to me. Did everyone know that Oren was dead and Egan was now the Prince of Arrow, or was it like only Jorg somehow?
No, I think it was pretty widespread knowledge. It was
But
just,
did Catherine know?
yeah, I think
But
she knows.
in her last letter, the
But
last,
it was only like 2 weeks old, right? At that point.
yeah, it was recent. The last that we got from Catherine was Egan had been writing, and she's like, oh, I finally got a letter from Egan. This is weird. He never writes. And it seems super sus looking back, although I didn't realize it at the time. So I don't know if she knew going into the battle or not.
She was a smart person. She's a smart girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
She probably put it together because she couldn't access her husband's dreams, right? I mean, she couldn't ever access it, but even before she couldn't, she could still find him, I think.
Right.
So maybe that absence of her husband, she knew something had happened to him.
And one of the last things she says was that now he's taken up with Sages and I'm telling him not to. And then like, this is the last thing she hears from him. But it was cool because throughout the beginning, the first few hundred pages, it never says in present day if it's Oren or Egan. It just says the Prince of Arrow, which works because it is the Prince of Arrow, but not the Prince of Arrow that you think it is. So it's cool. I liked that.
What about like the Prince of Arrow was killed by a bullet? Like, is that like a thing, or am I just?
Oh, I didn't think about that.
It could be. Yeah. Okay.
Some irony there.
Because there is a line in the book that's like it references bullets, and he's like, "Yes, I do know what those are too." You know what I mean? And like
it's like right before, yeah.
I remember when I was first reading, I was thinking, is Jorg actually going to do this? Like, is he going to kill somebody who he knows is better than he is for the kingdom, for the future of the world? Somebody who can unite it and would be the greater emperor for all of these people. But at the end, pardon my cat.
That's awesome.
At the end of the day, it was Sages. Sages stepped in because Egan couldn't be, or sorry, not was it Oren? Is that his name?
Yeah.
Oren of Arrow couldn't be controlled.
But that's okay. But that's kind of what annoys me about the ending, though, is because it didn't force Jorg to make that decision. And I feel like that's what the book is telling you that it's going to do, is have you watch Jorg make bad decisions.
Yeah.
So let's say hypothetically, if it was Jorg versus Oren of Arrow, what decision would he have made?
He would have killed him.
No, I don't think he knew. I don't think he knew, because he even told Oren, he was like, I don't know, like, I'm glad you did it because I might have been content just to like.
Well, that he tells Egan that, right?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but he tells him that. But come on, Jorg will lie. He cares nothing about honesty. I think he kills Oren.
I don't think he does.
Really?
I think he matures enough in those few years to realize that even though it's what he wants, that it's not. I think he knows that it's wrong enough that he's not going to.
I think he would have formed an alliance and backstabbed him like after they conquered the kingdom. That seems.
No, I think that Jorg lets him.
In the comments down below, if you're watching this on YouTube, say if you think that he would have killed Oren or not.
Nice.
Got him.
Or hop on Discord and let us know what you think. That's probably the easier way to talk to us.
Yeah.
I don't think he sacrifices. I don't think he lets that battle go on and as many thousands die if he knows he's just gonna submit to Oren. I think he was in it to win. Although he knew that Egan had already killed Oren. So maybe if he already knew that Oren was dead, he wouldn't have even gotten into the whole wedding day battle. Yeah, hard to say. It's a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like I want to do my worst of the best. Should we?
Yeah, we can do worst of the best.
There's a few more plot points, so try to make your worst of the best about a plot point we haven't talked about yet. How about that?
Okay.
Can I go first?
Okay, Josh.
My worst of the best is swamp zombies, which you alluded to at the beginning. Sorry, I don't know how much this is.
We didn't even talk about. We don't have enough time, but we didn't talk about it.
I know this is partly why I want to talk about it right now because it was such a cool scene.
Yes.
And again, in freaking like if this were a TV show, then this would be an amazing episode like this, kind of horror, like jump scare zombie, like, this is so cool. But part of the thing about this series is it sets up some settings which are really interesting, cool, and then never revisits them. You get them for like a chapter or two, and then you're out of there, and you don't go back. And so I feel like this is one of those things where it was super cool, really fun, great imagery, and I just didn't get enough time there, and wanted to maybe revisit there, get more time there, or just have it be a bigger part of the book.
Well, wasn't it just the same? I mean, I know it was a different location than from Prince of Thorns, but wasn't it pretty much the same setting as the whole episode with Chella? Then just, we're taking on Chella and her zombies again in a different place. It's like level 2 of this video game. I
guess so, yeah. But again, I still would have liked to see it more, I really like the necromancy part of the book because I think that is like the most fantastical part of the book. And so having that be a bigger part in general and more specific at this swamp location, I would have, appreciated more of that. But,
yeah, I can see that.
I guess that leads in to 2 other points that we didn't talk about briefly. So Jorg's magic is gone. Both his newly acquired fire magic and the necromancy that he's had around, that's both gone now, or that's what we're supposed to understand by the end of the book. And the dead king is now like the new big bad now that Sages is taken down. Yeah, I don't know about the dead king.
I didn't really get that.
Maybe that's someone else's worst of the best is the dead king, because we have nothing.
I feel like you're doing your worst of the best right now, Steven.
No, I have a different. Mine has to be different.
All right. Fair enough.
So I think my worst of the best is like Gog and Magog. Like I just didn't really understand why, like how they died, or I don't know. I felt like I was playing catch up at that part of the book, and I like all of a sudden this like main character is gone.
Well,
Magog was dead in book 1.
First, yeah.
Okay, sorry, Gog.
Are you thinking of Gorgoth?
Sure. Yeah.
No. Gog was a big deal.
Yeah, but Gorgoth also didn't die. So maybe I'm asking if you thought Magog was Gorgoth and like it's all jumbled up together.
No, whatever, like the kid that they rescued, like
okay, Gog.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, Gog.
Okay.
Yes.
Gog. Yeah, right. And then they also try and go to rescue him again, but and that's where Jorg gets his burn. I don't know, guys. That
I feel like you were falling asleep during this part.
Might have been, yeah.
So
So-
they left because of Gog will eventually kind of explode or something. He's like
consumed.
a ticking, be consumed. He's like a ticking time bomb. So they go to try and find him help. And I think it's also Jorg is trying to somewhat match the Prince of Arrow because the Prince of Arrow is so well traveled and knows all about his soon to be empire. And so I think Jorg feels a little inferior. And so that's one of the reasons why Jorg leaves. But they go to get help for Gog from this fire mage, Farrakhind. And Farrakind's this bad guy who doesn't want to help them, but wants to take Gog. And I think they ultimately
He's kind of lost his mind. In my reading, he seemed to be basically consumed by the fire.
Yeah, and which would, I think, similar to what would happen with Gog if enough time had gone on. And so at the end of the day, Gog fights him off, or fights with Farrakhind, and I think they melt the mountain or something.
Yeah, their use of fire is enough to melt the ice in I believe like the caldera of the volcano, and then all of this water rushes through. And Jorg has observed, because Jorg is just incredibly intelligent in all of these matters, has observed that the tunnels are, smooth and water has flowed through here at one point. So he risks it all and comes through once again, as Jorg always does. But the water that is just melted rushes in and comes down on everyone as they're red hot. Right. And Farrakhind is extinguished, and Gog is also killed. I think he like bursts into a million pieces because he's basically like white hot and then cooled like way too rapidly.
And yeah, I don't know. I felt like that was a part of the book that I just didn't like. I don't know. Didn't understand.
I thought it was really well done. I think maybe you need to revisit
Maybe
it.
I need to go back and listen to that again. Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'll do my worst of the. Was that your worst of the best, Ben?
Yeah. Well, that was just me as a reader not paying attention.
All right, so my worst of the best. So Stephen actually just touched on it. I'm specifically going to say the final battle, just because that highlights one point in which, as cool as it is to see Jorg overcome these immense odds, sometimes it's frustrating just to be like, this odds are so stacked against Jorg. Like in this battle, you're like, well, okay, well, he just killed 1,000 people, but there's still 19,000 more.
Yeah.
And he just keeps pulling one trick after the other out of his pocket. And it gets to the point where maybe it was just my second read through, but I was like, this is like a little bit much, where you're like, it's like one thing after the other. And you're like, it's not quite as believable at this point.
Especially when he was even running out of plans that were locked away from his memories. Like he got his memories back and he's like, oh, I still don't have any more plans. But as the reader, you're like, but we know you're still going to win somehow.
Yeah. So anyways, it was a cool battle, cool scene. He defeats the Prince of Arrow, but it was a little bit much at times.
All right. After forcing Ben and Josh to choose scenes that we hadn't covered yet, I am going back to the final battle again for my worst of the best. And it's the gun scene, because the gun scene was cool. And we talked about, whipping out the gun, Indiana Jones style. But it was, in my opinion, it was just given away like a few pages too soon. Because once we got to the point where it talked about how he picked up the gun from the, he finds like the stasis chamber from what's his face who had committed suicide, the data memory, and then he picks up some mysterious thing from the lockbox underneath his throne. You're like, ooh, what is it? Well, it's obviously a gun. And then he goes and he uses it. Like, it was just given away a few pages too soon. Yeah. So I knew that he was going to shoot him as they were walking up with Nirvana playing and everything. Yes. We knew that he was still going to shoot him. I think it would have been a little bit cooler if we didn't find that out until the very last moment.
Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. I do think it was cool that was like, why do you think I've been training so hard the last X number of years? And he's like, not so that I could beat you, but so that you take the fight, thinking, you know what I mean? Like, I thought that was interesting he's baiting him in, knowing that he's still not going to be the better person, but having the other person, manipulating the other person to think that he thinks that he can beat him. I thought that was the most interesting part for me.
I mean, I think that's a nice line to say, but I think he was training to try to be the best swordsman.
Because he found the gun. Because if you go back to the timeline, he found the gun before he started really training in earnest to be the best swordsman.
Okay, that's fair.
Because I think he found the gun before he met the Prince of Arrow the first time. No,
it was after.
It was after,
but like you say, I'm sure he continued his training for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
But also, like, he shouldn't abandon his training because he still did a lot of fighting.
No, but you knew that he had that plan, that as long as he could go, like, the reason why he was just trying to inflict damage, he knew that he couldn't win, right? So he was just trying to inflict as much damage so that the Prince of Arrow would take a duel. And then he knew that he could beat him in that duel because he had the gun.
Okay, that's
and
fair.
He knew that he would take the duel because he knew that Jorg thought that he legitimately had a chance of winning because he had been training and Jorg is full of himself. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it worked. All of that setup worked really well.
Yeah. I mean,
you're right about the gun thing, but I think the rest of the setting up the duel with the taking as many casualties as they can and all that stuff worked really well.
Okay. All right. This is our review of King of Thorns, book 2. We will get to Emperor of Thorns in the near future when our crowded reading schedule allows. We are reading Foundation now to prepare for the Apple Plus show. But I don't know. Any final King of Thorns thoughts? I guess let us know what song you think should be playing as they walk up for the duel.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear the thoughts of one of our Discord members in particular on this, who's a composer. So
also, I just want to say this isn't about the book, but we're really trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you do come listen to our stuff on YouTube, then throw us a subscription and like the video and all that stuff, because we it's our goal to hit 1,000 by the end of the year, and we're pretty close, but we need everybody that's listening to subscribe.
Yes, we need you, Fantology listener. We need your subscription to help our wildest dreams come true. All right, guys. See you next time. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Fantology. If you'd like to let us know your opinions on all things sci-fi and fantasy, join our Discord. Invites are in the episode descriptions below. If you'd like to support the show, like these fine folks here, you can do that at patreon.com/Fantology_books. Patrons get early access to new episodes, exclusive postings, and exclusive Discord benefits. But of course, just listening and watching and sharing with your friends and family is support enough. Journey before destination all.